I te tuatahi me karakia rā, paku karakia nei tātai katahi ka mihi atau kia Welby, ka tuku atu, ka whakahoki atu rā te rākau kia koe Liam. So no reira, e tō matawariki, ka konei rā mātou tuku atu rā i nā whakamuimuti kia koe tēnei rā. Māua nō rā tēnei hui arataki, māua nō rā nā kaimā taki-taki, e whakakaha, e korowai tia hia mai rā i tō korowai aroha, tō matawariki. I runei tō ingoa. Tēnei te mihi atu āmini. Kia ora koe Welby, nau mai hara mai ki tēnei hui a tātou. Nau mai hara mai ki tēnei āhuatana mihi nei. Ko tēnei te mihi atu rā kia koe I raro I nā manaaki tano te runurawa. Nau mai hara mai, whakatau mai I waina nui nei I tēnei hui. A ipurangi nei. Welby, nau mai hara mai. Kia ora roa atu. Kia ora Liam.
Kia ora. Like I said, it really is great to have so many people here. I think when registration started to slow down, we were just over 2,800 people interested in this conversation. And I think it points to the fact that there's a real thirst across the profession to be able to have these types of conversations. And NZEI is really excited about providing a platform to be able to have those. We're really excited about this concept of conversations taking place with teachers, with educators, by educators and for educators. And we also wanted to make sure that this conversation wasn't just a one-off. And so you're going to start to see opportunities for these conversations taking place on a range of different topics. And they're going to be linked through the hashtag NZEI Conversations. And so as you're using social media to talk about these things, please keep that hashtag in mind. In terms of the format for the event, I'm about to pass over to Welby, who's going to take us through a presentation. And then there's going to be an opportunity for Q&A in the second half. We will be looking to be sticking really closely to that 4 o'clock finish in the interest of respecting people's time. But if we could just test the Q&A functionality, on your Zoom toolbar, you'll see an opportunity here for Q&As to be entered. If people could jump on there and answer the question whether or not you're currently wearing your pyjamas, that would be really helpful, just so we can get a sense that people are able to access that. And yep, that is absolutely humming along.
Kia ora mai tātou, namihi nui naku kia koutou katoa. Hopefully this bit isn't breaking up, and welcome to a beautiful afternoon. I'm going to spend about 30 minutes having a talk about relationships and common sense. And I thought it might be useful to put our feet on the ground about something to start off with. That, you know, at the moment, there's when we're not working from home, trying to make something, we're not at home trying to do work. We're at home during a crisis, and we're trying in a temporary period of time to find our way forward. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what that really means in real terms, beyond aspirations and ideals. So like you probably at the moment, my family is distributed across the world. Some of them couldn't get home. Some of them are home. My most intimate friends seem remote, and my most remote friends seem very intimate. But I was talking to my mum. So she's with my sister down in Kawhia at the moment. And I said to her, I realised that 72 years ago, she was in a very similar situation to this. So New Zealand had closed down its schools, and this was because of the polio epidemic. So we had, there were over 1,000 people were infected and 70 people died. And in the north, they closed the North Island schools first and then the South Island schools. And they, my mum is there holding the cat in a pose that no cat ever wants to be photographed in. And beside her is her best friend, Bev, who came down from the city to stay. And so at this time, there was social distancing, 6 feet away from each other, and 4 months without formal school. And I said to her, Mum, what do you remember about learning in that time? And she kind of looked blankly at me, and I said, well, did they have kind of correspondence or something? And she said, oh, yeah, there was stuff on the radio, and some schools sent out little packs of stuff to learn. And I said, well, how did it go? And she said, we didn't do it. And I thought, well, that's not going to be a great deal of help for a talk, to my colleagues. And I said, well, so if you were looking back at those 4 weeks, do you see them as a gap in your education? And she said something, I guess, quite expected. She said, of course not. Of course it wasn't a gap. She said, in that time, we learnt to preserve. So she said, ever since that time, I've preserved food for you kids. That got us through the winters on the farm, and I still preserve food. She said, we learnt to ride a horse. She said, we learnt to rope a trapeze up underneath the blue gum tree, and we were trapeze artists. And she said, and because it had been a drought that year, and she said, we had Roman sandals, they'd just come in, they were super cool. She said, we found a way of squatting down and turning the back paddocks into ski slopes by squiggling down the side of the hill. And I began to think a little bit about what this common sense woman had done as a child in a time of adversity in our country. And it made me think about this. You know, school is not the god of learning. Most people do most of their learning, most of our kids do most of their learning outside of school. So if we imagine any school day, and we have, say, let's pretend that for 10 hours our kids are sleeping. They're not, but let's pretend that. Then if they come to school, they're there for about 6 hours. And then 8 hours, this is on a normal school day outside of the COVID thing, they're learning in other environments. In fact, most of the learning happens in those environments. And that's why sometimes, we'll get kids who into our classes with us, and they've been quite wounded, but they've still managed to carry on learning because there's kapahaka, or there's a sports team, or there's an amazing family who still believes in them. And they hold learning together. So I think it's really useful for us to remember that this is a temporary thing, and it doesn't have to play out like a biblical template. It doesn't have to be perfect. What it has to be is a contribution. So it seems to me at the moment, we've got two groups of, we've got three, but let's have a look at two groups where there's anxiety. And the first one is teachers. So we're in a situation where you're overworked, and you're probably not saying it because, in a typical New Zealand way, we just want to show that we can help with this. You may have vulnerable people at home. You may be one of them. Your own health might be at risk. And you're now finding yourself torn between, how do I become two people in this new system where I'm going to be maybe educating some people at school, some people at home, or maybe I'm going to be at home, but my colleagues will be looking after people at school. And we go, I'm not sure that I know the exact answer. Well, the truth is we don't know the answer because the answer doesn't exist, because this is new territory. All we do know is that the possible answers sit in the same network of people who are sitting there on the other side of their screen listening to this. The ideas collectively are sitting in there. But teachers often ask questions that are not part of the big debate around the idea of provided learning, especially when it's online. So one of the things, if you just glance beyond your screen for a moment and you look around you, that's the world that can hear the lessons. So for many teachers, they go, look, I'm concerned about the fact that when a child is struggling with learning in my class and they're making mistakes, there's only me and the people in that class who hear that. But when I take it into homes and communities like this, I can't see who's on the other side of that screen. I can't hear that the neighbours hear a child failing. I can't hear, and nor can I guarantee, the safety of the cocoon that I create around encouraging people to take risks and fail. So there's an anxiety that sits around there. There's an anxiety that sits around the fact that most of the parents of the kids we teach grew up in a neoliberal education system that was very predicated on performance and micromanaging and getting things secure. And then you accrued points so you could get merit, or you could get to red group, and everything was mapped against this very, very secure, false, but secure network. But that's not the world we're in. That's not the world we're in. And we're having to bring kids and communities and a nation, this is us as teachers, are doing that to a place that's ideologically a long, long way from that. So we've got this potential that or this anxiety that we might be measured against something which we actually can't, nobody can do. And we're having faith in the fact that there's a kind of a generosity and kindness that has become evident socially in the way that New Zealanders work and talk with each other. But if we have a look at another group, it's families. So, you know, I talked to my niece about this the other day. I said, how are you coping? And she said, look, my husband and I, we're both sitting at our table and we're trying to hold on to our jobs by the skin of our teeth. Our neighbours are both redundant. She said, our priority is getting food for our families and being able to pay the rent and trying to hold jobs down or make ourselves relevant in the job market. That's the priority. She said, we love our kids. We are exhausted. Right now, they're sitting, this is what she told me, sitting on the carpet, drawing tattoos all over each other's backs. And she said that we've also at the same time had lots of emails in from the school. So each of our kids is in a different class and two of them are at different schools. And we don't have grandparents or people sitting in the room who are able to help with this. We've just got a group of kids and a family who's desperate. And she said, and I started thinking about it and I thought, so I asked, so what's working? And she said, well, you know, we go for a walk around our community and in lots of the windows, there are teddy bears. People have put teddy bears. We taught the kids fractions the other day by getting them to work out how many teddy bears there were in 10 houses. She said, but that's all we could do. That's all we could do because we were having to get plans drafted up for our businesses. She said, you know, we've got limited resources. Most of us, when we came into the lockdown, didn't have time to pick up art supplies. We had some paper at home. We have some books, but we don't have, and you know, we already know from the most recent releases, there's about 80,000 homes in New Zealand that don't have internet. Now, while there may be radio and TV, what we do know is we have an uneven world that we're working in, very uneven world, where priorities are going to be different. And so that seems to have spelled a huge, big problem. But in fact, I'm talking about this because I think it suggests something wonderful, but it has a change of focus in it. A lot of us have experienced recently this idea of chronocentricity. So this is Jim Fowles' idea. And he says that sometimes in times of adversity, we're taught to believe that technology will save us. You know, that if we all connect to whatever this is, it's going to fix it. But actually, it's not. That's not how it works. When we imbue technologies with euphoric ideas that it's going to save our situation, when we turn aside from the fact that it'll be human beings and disobedient and creative thought that will fix the situation or help with the situation, and we think that some system which is being marketed to us will do it, we miss a really important point. So this euphoria has sat around and has blossomed over the last few weeks. But Tom Standage, he talked about it this way. He said, you know, if we look at when airplanes first started transporting the public, the idea that was put out was this was going to bring world peace. Suddenly we were all going to be in each other's world. The technology was going to afford it. You know, within a few years, they were dropping bombs on cities from the airplanes. The telegraph was the same thing. When the telegraph was released, everyone said, this is going to be the new savior of our world. This technology will save our world. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. I think John Gray, who's a philosopher of Western thought at London School of Economics, he says this. He said, you know, civilization doesn't become more civilized. We don't become more civilized. Technologies may change, but we are still made of great capacity for good and great capacity for bad. And in any difficult situation, it's our job to understand what human behavior is and not to pretend that something else is going to come in and save it. So So, you know, in the Chronicle of Higher Education, they've just started talking about this time we're in, this great experiment, they call it a grand experiment. Well, I think that's bollocks. I don't think it's a time when you can measure up the ability of distance learning over face-to-face learning, because the context it's not consistent. It's terribly inconsistent. It is a time when we try to work creatively with what we have at hand and what we think can be at the hands of families with whom we're working, and we navigate a way forward. But it is not a grand experiment. It's a time of crisis that we're trying to get ourselves through creatively. So what have we got? Well, here's some things that I've been experiencing, and I'm not setting myself up to be God here. Just like you, I'm trying to find my way through to find ways that I can look after my students and the families that also love them. So these are some things that I've noticed. Time has become a bit more gentle. You know, not rushing to get the kids to school, get up and I make it through a day doing stuff, but it's not micromanaged, it's not fractured, it feels different. The relationships I'm having with people are actually far more intimate. I live on a no-exit road, and I have met just about all my neighbours. I've lived here for 38 years and I hadn't met them. And while we show social distance, people are actually talking to each other. There's a level of intimacy also inside our homes where we're getting to spend more time with people than we ever have. And the day is kind of holistic. Things just bleed into each other. And I think that those ideas of the gentle, the holistic, and the intimate are a good way of looking for a roadmap or a compass to pull us through this situation. One of the things we know that we've seen that's very clear in this period is in times of adversity, people will default to creative behavior. This is why you've seen so many postings online where people have made up parodies or they've done things, they're sharing. There's this huge amount of sharing of stuff which has been made, where people are making teddy bears, people are doing things again, because the creativity is what we call autotelic. In other words, it actually feeds us. I can't find a flash word for this. It lifts our spirit. It feeds us. When we make and create things, we get it. One level, it affirms that we have control over something, that we have the ability to affect something. But it also is a sustaining thing. So it's probably a good thing to have in a back pocket when we're thinking about how to work with kids in a difficult situation. So we also know that this is temporary. This is temporary, and we have come up against a kind of reality check where some things that overpromised we discover are not so great, and other things that we underconsidered, like love or chilling out a little bit and not getting too stressed over something, those things are actually really useful. They're very productive. And so we have this small window of adversity that we're doing. And so I'd like to stand back and say, so what might that mean for how we navigate the next few weeks? Well, it seems to me that there's this incredible thing. This is an opportunity here that has never existed before. Our kids are right in the middle of history. They are embodied in the middle of history. This is a time when they can document that, however, write the letters to themselves at 30, make the time capsules, create the comic book with the daily diary, whatever. That this situation that seems so adverse is the source of potential. So they all are living inside something. So to let that disappear, and in 5 years, someone goes, what were you doing during the COVID lockdown? And people go, I don't remember. That there was no communication from the self to the self about it. And so if we are in environments where families we're all having to work flexibly, where things are not templated and they're not assured, it seems to me that flexible post-disciplinary models of learning are going to be the most effective. So these are not trying to replicate what is at school or piling out lots of worksheets for different curricular areas, but actually dissolving discipline completely, because disciplines are only something that are brought into formal education. They're not actually how we learn. We don't learn in disciplines, not normally. And so if we think of interdisciplinary projects or interdisciplinary approaches, we might get things like, take a book that you've got at home and reread it, and now create the next in the series. If it's a kid's book, you might illustrate it and rewrite it. If it's another kind of story, you might write the next with those characters. This is something that doesn't have to lock into time. It's autotelic because it is creative at its source. It uses whatever resources there, even if it's a story that someone's told. And it means that that person can work flexibly with time in an environment where time might not be something which is going to be fixed or reliable. The big thing with the autotelic is it comes back to the idea of a child-centered. It comes back to the idea of the creative project, that there's a lot where the child has a lot of determination inside it. Comes back to an idea that New Zealand led the world from the 1940s to the 1970s. And that was when we truly did have a child-centered education, or philosophically we did. So maybe the return to that is a great thing, because what it can do is it can show parents the beauty and wonder of learning that way. That it doesn't have to be worksheets and a certain amount done each day. It can be a creative way of learning and taking on projects that are auto-centered, that are centered on the self and the self-experience, or are creative projections from that. So making puppets and filming them if you've got your phone. So these are getting rid of the idea of the discipline, getting rid of the idea of the subject, and setting projects that can be realized in very, very flexible ways. And with that, alongside that, what I think about is this. I really like this guy. His name's John Dewey, and he's a philosopher and an educationalist. And this is a compliment from me because I think it's a beautiful word. I think of him as a wise man. And he said that we are only fully formed as a society when we are in communication with each other. And so as teachers, as educators, as parents who have an experience of learning and teaching, the more we can reach out to and share ideas, innovative approaches with other people, not just in our schools, but in the wider community, the more we do that, the more we increase our agency, the more we increase our health and the potential options we have, the health of our profession, and the potential options we have to move forward in unusual ways and positive ways. So we get ourselves beyond being functionaries, which we never were. None of us came into teaching to do that. And we have an opportunity to work in much more flexible ways that are not, they don't put accountability at the front of the initiative. What they do is put the potential for growth at the front of the initiative, and that we work through that. So we are transforming beyond ritual. We're transforming beyond discipline. We are using, we're creating activities that are relevant to the time in which kids are living and the situation in which they're living. And maybe underpinning all of that is this idea that although we have to be strong, because we are actually potentially leading an education system back to a mirror where it looks at itself with the fundamental question is, how do people really learn? And sitting underneath that is the concept of manaaki, is that we might be motivated to do that as an act of care, as an act of contributing to the navigation through and out of a crisis. If nobody said it to you beyond the ritualistic words that you see on just about every email saying, we realize this is really tough. If they haven't said it to you, can I say it to you now? This really is tough. Of course it's tough. And nobody knows what's happening in your world. Not really. And you're now going to help other people navigate through their worlds, and you can't see into their worlds. So this is a difficult thing. and it will call into the very heart of who you are as a teacher. And we're just damn lucky we've got you here. We're damn lucky. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I started kind of writing a key point that kind of struck me in the heart, and I've got a funny feeling we're going to see a few of them emerging on Twitter after. But we really good questions starting to come. So if you do have them, please do the Q&A function. We'll work through them. Some of them look to combine. And there's pressure that can come from parents around that fear that child out keeping up. The second one, the one that comes off in your college, your children not or and the experience. It's going to a little bit around pressure.
I can't hear the questions, Liam. I can't hear your question. It's breaking up.
Hey, Welby.
Okay, so I'll take over if that's right, Liam. I can see the questions there. It might be a way forward if that's okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. So the first one there, Welby, is how do we keep our parents and whānau from stressing out about how much learning they are supposedly missing out on?
Wow, what a great question. What a great question. The thing is that learning is not a glass full of water. And if you don't get a couple of weeks at it, you're going to... you're going to be worse off. So one of the, and I think the question's so important because it's actually a conversation that we have, very few of us have had with parents, but it's actually really important, which goes, your child is learning brilliantly in a world outside school. And you've just had a few weeks of that, and it may have sent you around the bend. It may have, let's be honest, it may not be perfect. But they have been learning, and they're not going to suddenly forget how to read or forget how to calculate or they're not going to forget those things. What we have, so don't worry and don't stress. The human child is this incredibly sophisticated sponge, and they will use whatever opportunities around. This is the wonder of what intelligence is. It will use whatever context wrap around us. And we know, we've got piles of research to put this on. So, but I come back to the point before. It's true that most of the parents who have grown up in a world that didn't teach them that. It taught them that all learning that was relevant had to be assessed and accounted. And if you didn't get enough of it and you didn't accrue enough, you hadn't accrued learning. The accrual of assessments has nothing to do with learning. Learning is like being healthy. So I think that one of the things that we can do, and I've already seen some teachers doing it, is if we're talking to families, take that question head on and go, let's just talk for a moment about what learning really is. Because don't panic. Don't worry that you're doing a bad job out there or that somebody's doing a bad job somewhere. They're not. They're not. Your child is learning. Your child will continue learning, just in different ways.
Cool. Such a beautiful way of phrasing it, that learning is like being healthy, and that having that reassurance that the children are still learning is wonderful. Sort of related to that then, transformed learning requires transformative leadership. So what role does the community have in achieving this?
Oh, wow. So I don't know, people have probably seen this in lots of different ways, but the other day I've only been out of my house once to shop, but that's because I live in a beautiful place and I don't really want to go out of it. But I decided to walk down a street and I saw the teddy bear thing. I didn't know what it was. I thought, damn it, people have put bloody teddy bears everywhere. What's this all about? Thought maybe I missed out on a Stephen King movie or something. That there was something. I didn't realize that was a community caring. That was the way that a community cared. And I think that one way that we can have communities know about that is to tell the stories of care. to show how that ties in with education. The same way when I said, my niece used it to teach fractions. The person putting the teddy bear probably never imagined that someone was going to do that. This is a time, so while people are sometimes euphoric about some things that will come out of this, for me, they're not technologically based. They are around conversations with families and communities about how we work together and actually the potentials for brilliance in that. It's not just a school committee meeting. It's actually about how communities make environments that when people pass through them in their formal ways in groups and in their informal ways, how they actually feed education, how they feed. So I always think of it as they feed the health of other people. But if we don't have those conversations, those things go past, and they're going to lose relevance if they don't happen in the time that this is occurring.
Cool. Again, beautiful, beautiful answers and questions. Sort of related to that one then is probably coming from the early childhood sector, which is probably less technological than we're seeing in primary. I could be wrong there. But what are your thoughts on bringing Te Whariki, which is the early childhood curriculum, into the primary sector?
So I may be unpopular for this. I'm not a great believer in curriculum. I'm a great believer in human thought. And so what I would say would be valuable is to bring some of the immensely skilled educators from early childhood, the humanity of childhood in. So, sorry, you ask a guy for his personal opinion. That's my opinion. My sense is the value lies in the ways that human beings work with each other. And in some organizations, like in early childhood, in this wonderful way, it has preserved in some of its finest educators the genuine functioning of the child being at the center of learning. They've genuinely have preserved it. And it's the same thing that if we could bring some of our great primary practitioners into secondary school and some of our secondary and primary and early childhood people into tertiary and not in the school of education, right through those things. So the human practice of learning was not silos and atomized, but actually I love my job. I work at a university. I've got 14 PhD students. We love each other dearly and hate each other dearly, but generally we love each other dearly. But I realized that it's very easy to become remote from the humanity of learning in a world where you can make anything sound good, and so that grassroots, this is why I talk to my family, and I talk to my nieces and my nephews and my mum and my, all those people, because they put my feet on the ground and they show me the humanity of educating in a different environment. And so that would be my probably less than expected answer to that.
Welby, it's Liam here. Can you hear me this time?
I can.
Oh, look at this, eh? Third time's the charm. Hey, one of the questions that's just come through talks about the connection between student to student, and I think it's one of those questions that's more looking forward as well around as we do start the partial reopening of schools and early childhood centres, how the need to stay in bubbles might affect the importance of that student to student relationship.
Yeah. So I'm not God, so I don't have the answer to this. But what I do believe is, and this comes from, so my field is I work in design. And one of the things that we believe is if you get stuck, go and ask the end user. In other words, we need to actually be asking kids about what this is. We need to ask kids about what their experience of things are and what does it, because they have got, in our, I've experienced this in an organization where the higher up people are, the more prepared they are to make assumptions about other people's experience and make grand plans. And they wash down and it all goes to hell in a handbasket. So here's an opportunity where we can ask kids about going, so what's good about learning this way? And what would you change if you could make it better? Or what's worth keeping? And my sense is in the immediate, all we've got is a little window of time to find out some stuff, but we may not come up with the solution. The greatest solution is the longer term one that bleeds out into education. And this amazing opportunity where most of us, when we went through school, nobody ever asked us this question: how do you learn? But we have the opportunity now to ask it with real purpose. What's the best way for you to learn? And then the killer question, which is deep, why? Why? And so again, I know it's kind of putting the humanity at the center of the thing, but my sense is that that's a really positive discussion we can be having with kids, so not just about doing stuff, but thinking about what the impact of this is and what are these environments and how do they work for you? And we can learn from that.
Very cool. The next question, I think captures this idea that what you're saying tends to really strike at the heart of educators, and we sit there and we nod along because we love it and it feels right. Mm-hmm. But there seems to be quite a big education leadership base that is actually looking to continually reinforce this kind of market model. And we see that working its way back down through schools into expectations placed on teachers and support staff.
Well, this is a question. Yeah, right. It's a question I probably wish you hadn't asked me, but okay, so I'm going to be really honest. Some people get into positions by ambition, not talent. And some people stay in other positions because they're deeply talented. I believe it is our professional duty to find the best way forward wherever we sit in a system. And if we can convince other people, then that's good. But what we can never do is give away agency. And so sometimes we are handed, most of us are experiencing this, whatever jobs we're working in at the moment. People, because it's anxiety driven, and that's understandable, going, look, we've got to get a fix-it thing. That person who's giving that template, may well be in a position where they are really anxious about being judged. And they don't know any more than we do, and they're trying to help with something. It seems to me that when I look at reform in this country, because I believe that reform in this country has not come through policy change, it's come through ground root agency and people connecting with other people and feeding and looking out for other people. So I believe that that's something that is important now. That's why when you contact me, you said, would I do this? Although in truth, I was terrified of it. Just to say, I was terrified of doing this. I believe in what it has at its heart, which is the more we talk to each other outside of hierarchical systems, and the more principles, if you just dissolve that idea and go, the more educators talk to each other and expand the plethora of options and take courage to try those things, the richer we'll be. We will never be rich by limiting the number of people who get to make decisions. We won't do that. What we have to do is look richly at the opportunities and then be prepared to implement those things. That's, you sometimes hear a lot about this thing called design thinking. That's what's at the heart of design thinking, is going, the minds of 20 people are greater than the mind of one. And so, and similar, sitting alongside that, sometimes that person who seems the mind of one is doing that because they don't feel supported, so they're making an anxious, what they think is safe decision. And don't get me wrong, because I've got friends who are principals and are in different places in hierarchies, and they are some of the most extraordinary leaders. What I'm talking about here is people who may not be visionary or courageous leaders, who may be limiting or appearing to limit the agency of people. Look, teachers, we've done this for generations. If something doesn't feel right, we actually just shut the door in the room and do it. Okay. And if something is in a difficult situation, we just go, oh, well, here's a difficult situation. It's only temporary. Why don't we try this? You can almost hear that tone. Why don't we try? That's a teacher intonation pattern. It's a recognition of a way of working in the world. And that's in the spirit of who we are. And that's where our leadership comes from. It's letting that come to the fore now in an opportunity that's just waiting for it. And then supporting ourselves by expanding the networks of contact we have with people, so we're not becoming isolated because we're trying something different.
Thanks, Welby. So we've got a couple here, and they're definitely bouncing all over the place, but I'd really like to give them some ear. What are your thoughts about kind of fluid approaches where children have a learning program that's more based on values, key competencies, tuakana taina, project-based learning?
So I'm quite a strong believer in project-based learning. That's what, that's what a thesis is. We preserve it still in the highest parts of education. Well, no, towards the end of the road of education. I believe that when a person is involved in the question that they're answering, you get more transformative learning because it belongs to them. So values, I don't think, are taught. I remember going to every boys' rally. They had a list of values on the wall. I was outside smoking in the back of the toilets and teaching other people to smoke too. It didn't work. Okay, so I was not a good kid. But I do think that at the moment, these kids have been in a home where the home values have actually become explicit across these weeks. They've really, so it's not the set of values that are sitting on the wall, it's the environment. So my sense is that an open project learning thing has the potential for fluidity, potential for high buy-in, and it has flexibility in it. Values, I think, are inherent in doing stuff. So, and that's why if you belong to something, then you're going to be more heavily influenced by it. So these are values like, they're not necessarily the ones that we put on the wall. They're values like how to recover from failure and carry on. How to work with a difficult situation where you don't have at your fingertips the things you think you need, so you have to rethink something in the world. So these are different kinds of values, but they're actually ones that help us function fluidly in the world.
Yeah, this next one, I think you have touched on some of the solutions to it, but I wanted to be quite direct because it's come up a few times, and it speaks to our at-risk students. Some people have been speaking about them in terms of home life, in terms of literacy, in terms of behaviour. But what are our opportunities within where we are now to better meet the needs of our at-risk students?
So we're in a crisis in a difficult situation. This is my personal opinion, okay? I don't think that we can expect ourselves unreasonably to be able to solve situations that we were not able to solve well outside of this. I don't, because we're not gods. What I do think is that we can get insights into stuff and we can listen carefully to what the experience of this is, because it may teach us something. Some people probably know this. I couldn't read or write until I was at secondary school. And I was we didn't have a special class at Pareāwaha. We just had being the bin monitor, but it was kind of the special class. And you did get to play with the Cuisinairs most of the time. But sometimes by removing the structures of school and being in another world, that 8 hours that is outside of formal schooling, things that appear, that are challenging in school, they're still challenging, but they're not challenging in the same way because there's not the same culture wrapped around it. And so, I go back to my mum. And so my mum, oh God, she'll kill me for this, but she passed school C with 1 mark. That was back in the day when it was a pass-fail thing like that. Okay, she'll kill me, but she's not listening to this right yet, but she'll hear about it. So I make my apologies now. Sorry, Mum. Okay, but you did tell me that. So when she talked about being on the farm and skating down the hillside on her Roman sandals, she was talking about learning. She was talking about learning where there was nobody telling her it was right or wrong or judging her whether her attention span was long enough or whether it was nothing about that. It was just about the wonder of learning in a different context. And I think that although I'm not making light of the fact that there are huge challenges that people have. There's sometimes the place that they are at home is actually not safe. So if there's violence in the family, or if there's that not everything is a perfectly snow-clad landscape with a clear road that we can carve through it. But what I do think is for some students who have trouble with learning inside formal environments, we may be in a position where we would not be surprised that they've actually found great value in this situation, and they may not be quite that keen to come back to school.
I mean, this flows on, and I'm just going to reread this one out, but it's got, I believe that students discover their own curriculum. So when I send my child to school to discover their own curriculum, how do I keep my child safe when the school disagrees? My son's disruption has taken him into some unsafe spaces. How do we keep our children safe when bridging the gap between covering New Zealand's curriculum and discovering their own curriculum?
Sounds to me like you're an amazing parent. That's not an answer to it, but you know, back to what I said at the beginning, school is not the god of education. It's not. Although I have such deep respect for teachers, we are essentially not teachers, we're educators. So we function as educators, whether we're teaching in schools or whether in the community or whether in the back garden. We function, or as parents or uncles or aunties or grandparents, we function in that role. Sometimes one of the things that we encounter, and it's not just with school, it can be in employment and have somebody like this, where you've got something that is actually approaching toxic. And we might not be able to change it. We might find we can't change it, but what we can do is enhance what opposes it. We can enhance the worlds that oppose it. You know, my mum and dad would never let me believe that I was stupid, even though, you know, the school report said doesn't even try hard. But what they did do on the farm, they never let me think that I was not capable of something. They weren't going, you can be anything you want, because they're going, you know, you won't be. You know, you're not going to be a good pig farmer because you're not good with animals. You know, so that was going to be logic. But they did preserve belief in me. And sometimes I think sometimes it can be a single teacher. You can have two contrasting. You can have a child in a classroom with a teacher who is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. They build the spirit of the child up. They build their belief up. And then in another year, you might be in a situation where you have almost the opposite. And as parents or as people in communities, we understand that there is actually a greater realm, both of time and experience, that can exist outside of school. And we forget that at our peril. So to the person who asked that question, I suspect you've asked the question that's in a lot of people's hearts, because it was in the hearts of my family. The question you've asked is a real one, and the fact that you're asking it shows that I believe the solution you understand, which is I'm going to do the best thing I can with this other world, which is actually the majority world in which my child learns. If I cannot change this thing in there, I'm not going to go feeding it oxygen. It's like, I love the word couch grouch, which is somebody who's, you know, grumps about the world but never gets off and does anything. Well, I don't waste energy on couch grouches. Why? Go to a different room, you know, and sometimes we have in our lives, we have these alternatives where we go, this thing is staying there. Do I stay in the room or just go and visit that for the minority of time that I got to be there, and then go build the Hanging Gardens of Babylon out here? Sorry about the mixed metaphors there.
Cool. So we've just got one here. What do you see as the main role of a teacher in early childhood in terms of being able to role model and encourage passion for learning?
Oh, what a lovely question. Wow, what a lovely question. And the question contains its answer. You know, it's not just important, it's at the very core of something. You know, that's why I love it when I see teachers who go up, and this is a situation that kids are going to watch us now doing, going up in a situation where there is no roadmap, there is no formula, and they watch someone who they respect and like navigate a way through without a manual, you know, or preserve tenacity and passion at a time when people are fatigued and uncertain, are positive in the world at a time when people are anxious. And that's in early childhood, and it's at every part of education. Those of you who live like that You know, even though it's uneven sometimes, I know we're uneven. You're a godsend. You're an important and deeply important thing, because that's what kids learn from. They learn from, that's where the values are embedded. Watching that, I'll give you some examples. The person who doesn't badmouth their colleagues when they disagree with them, that they still maintain a kind of professional caution and care. So you can't get them as a kid into a conversation going, "Ooh, but miss," and they won't join it. They role model a kind of professional care for people who think and behave differently to them. You know, those are what I think are the values. So the question you ask from early childhood, your question is so good that it actually spans everything.
Well, I've got two more here just to finish up, and this one here just kind of stuck out to me as something incredibly real and practical. But how do we help the shy student to love coming back to school past this?
Wow. Do you know, I don't have an answer to that, but I do know where I'd get the answer. I'd get the answer by talking to friends who I respect as teachers and sharing my own ideas with them and listening to them. So that's not an answer I have. And in fact, it's probably the real truth of this. The more that we connect, you know, not in prearranged groups, connect with people we respect and like and find exciting, you know. And the more we do that, the more those very profound practical questions, we get different lenses on them. It's the same as the design thinking thing. One opinion, one lens is never as good as multiple lenses brought to the same question, offering different takes on it. Mm. So I'm sorry I can't answer the question from here, but I think I know the way that it could be answered, or I'd suggest the way it could be answered.
The final one that we've got here has come through a number of different times, but the kind of scene you are setting is a vision that we absolutely love. What is our opportunity as a group of educators on this call right now to do something about it?
On this what right now? Do you mean
on this webinar right now, what can we do to further that vision?
You make contact with other people. You make, so forget about me. You make contact with other people. If you know somebody's been sitting in here, I'm terrified to look, but you know, if you know somebody's been sitting in here, contact them and talk. Contact them and talk about stuff, so that because all this can ever be is an arm around your shoulder. It can't be the wellspring from where all answers will flow. And right now, you know, a group of people have done an extraordinary thing. A group of, probably about 3,000 people have come to sit in the room and to think. And they all have got different backgrounds and they've all got different contexts. If it turns into an event that you put aside and nothing happens from the trajectory, then it's been a piece of entertainment. Maybe not terribly good entertainment, but if it operates as a catalyst for some contexts and some discussions, you know, we collectively hold the light that goes forward in a darkened time. We collectively hold that light. So my sense is, right now, what do we do with this? You get off this thing and you make contact with somebody and you have a cup of tea on either side of a screen and you chew the fat, you know, and it's likely that you'll come up with ideas that are going to help us as a nation.
Well, I think that was such a lovely answer to finish on. And particularly the point that actually this is a one-off conversation in the scheme of time isn't actually going to lead to any change, but it's what we do as a result of this that is going to make all the difference. And we've gone into setting up these conversations with that very much in mind. And so we're really keen to see this conversation carry on, which is why we would encourage people on social media to be using the hashtag NZEI Conversations. There's also a post that has gone live on our Facebook page, which will be a place where people can go to further that. We've taken a short snippet from what you have shared to say as a kind of provocative conversation to get that going. And we're going to be rolling more of those out from this point onwards because, like I said, we actually want to keep this conversation going. But on behalf of all of us here, Thank you so much for being so willing to facilitate a conversation like this. The way you talk and explain ideas really does strike at the heart of why people do the job that they do. And it is really nice to be able to get that shot in the arm directly from you that spurs us on to the next challenge. Just in closing, Ripeka, I'll pass over to you to wrap us up officially. And once again, thank you very much to everybody for making the time to be here, to Welby and to the staff back here at NZEI who's worked their butts off to bring us to this point. Thank you so much.
Kia ora wātu, Liam. Welby, Welby, Welby. Mi harora wātu. Te noho mai rā I o reke reke. Te whakarongo atu rā kia koe. Tō mātaurana, tō matatau ki te kaupapa, tō nākau nui, kaua kore ki nā tamariki mai ho, engari ki nā whānau, ki nā kaiako huri noi te motu nei, kai reira rā koe, e maringi nā mai nei o maramatanga, o mātaurana. Welby, miharoro atu nā te huna whakarongo nei, I o kōrero I tēnei ahi nei. Nō reira, Welby, ko tētahi kupu kai roto I au mo wō kōrero ko tēnei kupu I te reo Māori, takiwātanga. It has three of many meanings, but the most significant of takiwātanga is in one's time and in one's place. Ka taka te kapa. We learn in one's time and in one's place. Iau e whakarongo atu ana ki a koe, koe rā te kupu I taka mai rā ki au, takiwātanga. In one's place and in one's time. So nō reira Welby, tēnei rā te mihi atu rā kia koe mai, tēnei whare I kawerau nei, tēnei kuia nei, ka rawe, me haroro atu. So I runei tēnā māku e tuku atu rā I te karakia ki ruri a koe, ki runei te rōpū nei, e mātakitaki mai nā. E tō mātau ariki, kai konei rā mātau, e tuku atu rā I nā whakamoimuti kia koe mo tēnei, enei kōrero, ko homai hia enei ranatira, enei mātana o te ao mātaurana. Kia mātau, enei nā, e noho mai rā I wana reke reke I tēnei ahi nei. Kai tēno atu rā mātau, kia manaki hia mai rā ia, kia manaki mai tātou katoa e whakarongo mai nei. Ai roto I nā rā kai mo ia mātau, e te atua tēnā korowai hia mai rā mātau I tō aroha noa. I runa I te ingoa, o I hui kraiti o te runa rawa, kia ora rawa atu, kia koutou. Kia ora Liam, kia ora Welby.